What's up? What's up? I'm Dr. Omatma, host of Egg Meets Sperm, where we're busting fertility myths, sharing tangible tips for your fertility journey, and bringing you the most knowledgeable guests to support your journey to parenthood. This podcast is for both women and men because getting fertile as fuck is for both partners, don't you think? Remember, just listening to this podcast won't get you pregnant, but following the tips we share just may. Let's get you fertile AF so that you can co-create the family you dream of. And if your partner's not listening to this, make sure to share this episode with your partner. Hello and welcome to Egg Meets Sperm. I am so excited and honored to be joined by Dr. Shiroko Sokitch, who is an MD that actually cares about you. She is the owner of the Heart to Heart Medical Center in Santa Rosa since 1993. Her background is very interesting because she is trained in general surgery. She's worked in emergency rooms, has trained in acupuncture, and really has an integrated approach of Western medicine, Chinese medicine, and functional medicine. So her new book, Healing When It Seems Impossible, 7 Keys to Defy the Odds, is a book about her unique and comprehensive healing approach and is available on Amazon. I am so excited to talk to you and kind of dig into your perspectives and findings on working with fertility from this very integrated approach.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
So let's dive in. I'm so excited. So, what is, in your perspective, what is Chinese medicine's view on fertility? And I know that's a relatively broad question, but let's start there.
So really, Chinese medicine's view is on everything. And in general, it's not about a diagnosis or a illness or a problem. It's about balance. And the whole idea is that you're made up of energy and that energy travels through your body in certain patterns. And when your energy's out of balance, there are problems. So the whole purpose of anything to do with Chinese medicine is to bring balance. And really, when you think about fertility or the inability to get pregnant or having issues with fertility, there's an imbalance someplace that one would like to be discovered, but also it wants to be in a whole picture. And I think that's why I fell in love with it so long ago, is that it's about a whole person, a whole picture.
So
Yeah.
say more about that, because I feel like a lot of times people on the fertility journey are thinking like, oh, I eat super healthy, my labs are good. I don't understand. What is this
Right.
whole picture that you're talking about?
I think that's why I practice all the different things that I do, because there are so many elements of anything.
Yeah.
But one of the unique things about Chinese medicine is that each organ, so we deal with organs, and each organ has additional functions beyond the physical functions that we know them to have. For example, this is important for fertility, is the liver regulates the smooth flow of energy in your whole body. It regulates your menstrual cycles. It regulates the emotion of anger. And it deals with, so in Western medicine, we think of it as dealing with detoxification and handling nutrients and things like that. So if you think about that big picture, and the liver also regulates that desire to get things done. And then on a spiritual level, the liver's job is sort of the space between your physical soul and your higher self. Which is so cool. Like, I mean, you can tell I love Chinese medicine, but so when you think about all of the things that are involved, it's emotions, it's spiritual, it's physical, it's even your environment, how you set up your environment so that it supports your existence. And so when you think about, okay, I eat right, One of the things I know about not just people who have infertility issues, but also many of my clients is they get focused on one thing. Like, I got to make this better. Whatever it is, it's about your whole person. It's about everything to do with you. And so, are there doubts and fears? Are there emotions that are holding you back? Are there issues in the relationship that maybe you're not aware of? Like, all of those things play a role in fertility. And then there are, of course, always additional physical things that may not have been addressed.
Yeah, so it's really about this like broader perspective, even on like the nitty-gritty organs. Um, and it's interesting because we do think of like liver detoxification, right? Is like the primary thing.
Mm, mm,
But let's follow that example all the way through. So let's suppose that someone is struggling with fertility and maybe you find like, oh, liver is out of balance. What
mm.
what might be going on under the surface, and what have you seen in terms of like how did the liver congestion perhaps create some of their like underlying.
So, because liver regulates menstrual cycles, it's usually fairly evident. They may have migraines. They may have high blood pressure. They may have really bad menstrual cramps or periods, or PMS or bloating and gas, right around their period. So, like, there's a whole complex of symptoms for women who have liver imbalance that kind of show themselves in the rest of their lives. So if that is the case, then what I would do is actually I would use acupuncture for that, because it's fairly easy to fix. But there are also Chinese herbs that you can use to help balance the flow of the liver. And then ultimately, in Chinese medicine, we say that disease comes either from inside your body or from outside. And if you think about outside, it's usually something to do with an infection, or we say wind or cold or heat, or some kind of element that comes in from outside your body. But the things that come from inside are all based in an emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you might want to explore, is there some hidden anger? Is there some hidden pain that hasn't been resolved? Like, all of that has something to do with the result of possibly not getting pregnant.
If we trace that through, is there that anger like maybe hidden? Is does it take specific moments to manifest in certain ways, or is this just like always the case? Like, oh, you have this anger thing that you have for an experience you had when you were 15, and it's still like playing out through your whole life? Or is it like the body chose to, or like going through the fertility issue maybe like brought up that hidden anger and now it's present for you to deal with?
Right. And that's not uncommon when people meet their partner, or when people meet or start getting pregnant. Issues that may never have been resolved from childhood may come up. I have so many clients that I've worked with over the years who, once they had kids, they wanted kids badly, but once they had the kids, they started feeling like all these things. And then when you dig into their history, it's like, oh, these things happened when they were a child, and they're being taken out on this baby because that's the experience that person had, so not to, so there's, it's, in some ways it's complicated, but in other ways it's actually fairly simple, because you can just, like, as soon as you recognize it, you can start to do something about it.
I can, I remember it, this hasn't come up recently, but there was a time when I kept seeing clients who were waking up in the middle of the night, and like I'm sure you're super into this like liver time. So I was like, huh. And it would always pause, I would pause and be like, is there some big change you're contemplating in your life? They're like, oh my God, how did you know? And I was like, well, you're waking up during your liver hours. So
Right.
it's like the soul trying to work out whatever is trying to work out It's just, I think it's so cool because it does, like, Chinese medicine definitely brings like a bigger perspective and potentially like more insight into why something is happening the way that it's happening. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I love that, and I have so much appreciation for all of that
yeah, yeah.
perspective.
Thank you. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, yeah.
And anytime a problem becomes difficult, and when people are coming in saying, I cannot get pregnant, then that's the problem being difficult, right?
Mhm.
When a problem becomes difficult, that's when it's time to dig into the unconscious, into the things that are affecting a person that they don't know. And remember that what we know about ourselves is like the tip of an iceberg. And so there's this whole iceberg of information that's available to us that we can't access unless we start to dig into it, into the darkness, into the places where we hold pain, or we hold things that we don't know about.
Is it kind of like what you're saying is like the tip of the iceberg is what's visible, and those are sometimes our symptoms, or like, oh, your hormones are out of whack, or yeah, you're having this PMS stuff going on, or
Yeah,
fertility issues.
yeah,
But underneath that, there's so much to uncover.
yeah, yeah.
I like that
And that's
vision
what
of it.
happens when you don't get what you want easily. When you don't get what you want easily, you have to dig
Yeah.
to find what else is going on.
I'm curious if you can, if you have interesting insight on this, because I get asked this question a lot. And that is, why do some people get pregnant completely easily? It's not their issue. It's
Mm.
like just a passing thing, versus other people struggle. And even more like finesse there, like, how do we determine if we're going to be in camp A or B? You know what I mean? Like, if there, I just talked to this woman who I had talked to 2.5 years ago,
Mm.
and she remembered, I did not. But she said, I talked to you 2.5 years ago, and I'm kicking myself in the butt because at that time I thought 6 months of waiting and going through your process was too long. And here I am 2.5 years later. You know what I mean? Like, she's literally been through the ringer for 2.5 years. And now, in retrospect, great, the hindsight is 2020. But is there a way to really like see internally and say, oh, if I'm going to be in that latter camp that might have issues with this, I want to be more proactive and not necessarily wait and think that 3 months, 6 months, 12 months even is too long, because I could potentially be on that journey for even longer.
That's the kind of an ageless question, really, and again crosses many barriers. Because I know so many people who said I would have gone to medical school, but it was too long. you know, and that takes too long, and that takes too long. And I remember when I wrote my book, was I was like, oh, this is taking too long. It ended up taking me, like, if you really think about when I first wanted to write a book, 20 years. But you just never know how long something's going to take. And so part of what I talk about is the journey.
Mm-hmm.
And we are spirits living in bodies.
Mm.
And we are here to learn and grow. And that is the most important aspect of our existence. And we don't think about it consciously most days.
Yeah.
Many of us, many people in our day and age have learned that when we have difficult relationships with certain people, that it's our school and that we have to learn from that relationship and that existence. We don't think of our bodies like that. We think our bodies should just do what we want. They should work like a car, right? So, if there's something wrong, you take it to the mechanic and you fix it and you don't think about it, and that's what we want from our bodies. But I specialize in taking care of people who have symptoms that nobody knows the answers to what's going on, right?
Mm.
And infertility is one of those things where, like, we don't know why necessarily, but there's a reason, and part of it is a lesson.
Mm.
Part of it is a learning for our growth. And so how do we predict whether that will happen? Well, you can kind of look back on your life. And if you're one of those people who's had a lot of lessons, you're probably going to continue having lessons. And there are some people who come to this life who don't have those lessons, that they have other lessons, so
Yeah.
I don't know if I could predict whether that would happen to somebody or not, but if they're walking in your door, then they're finally ready to deal with that. And that's what, they want to face. The thing about fertility, of course, that's also so difficult is the timing. Once you decide you want to have a kid, you have a window of time or a window of opportunity.
It's such an interesting journey because there is this like divine timing component. And I'm
Yes.
curious what you've seen with that because there is a little bit of like, couldn't this just happen? You know what I mean? Like, do I have to work so hard and deal with all my underlying stuff? Or is it just going to happen? And this question of like, where am I? Where do I fall with it? Is there going to be some divine timing that just like has it happen even though I've struggled for so long? And balancing that with what you just said of like there is potentially a lesson and there's potentially some learning that is deepening our relationship potentially with our own bodies, potentially with our partner, potentially with the baby that wants to come through us. And that is a different kind of experience that we're creating for ourselves if we're open to it.
I have a whole section in my book about divine timing because getting
Mm.
well, whenever you have any condition that's difficult, there's some element of, when is that window going to open, and usually we're very frustrated and upset about when that is going to happen and when is life going to break open the door for you, and you just never know. You just like, that's the frustrating thing about the whole journey of getting well or journey of getting pregnant is, when are you going to have that window, and why is it so easy for some people or some people who aren't even trying? I remember when I was in medical school, one of my biggest lessons was really my OB rotation
Mm.
because I did it at the university hospital. And I remember that we'd have these teenage girls who didn't even know they were pregnant. One came in labor. She thought she was having stomach cramps. I remember she was 16 and she thought she was having cramps. She didn't even know she was pregnant, and, delivered the baby in the emergency room because like, and then there's women who've tried and tried and tried and it's been so hard for them, and then they have some trauma in the labor and delivery, and so the story was just so heart-wrenching for so many people. And I've grown up since then, but it's when it's that heart-wrenching, that when you finally achieve that goal, that then it becomes an entirely different thing. Then
Mm-hmm.
that baby is a precious human being that has arrived, that you worked so hard for, and that what you have done is so much to bring this human into the world, and your heart is completely different than that person who accidentally got pregnant and didn't even know she was.
Yeah.
And the lessons are different and on
Yes.
both sides, right? Like, what do those people do? And but I've seen some of these women who, like, when they finally got to have their baby, and what a blessing that is and what a gift that is when it finally comes. And that's the gift of that divine timing, when it comes, it's such a beautiful blessing.
So powerful. I think that like question or conversation doesn't happen very often, and I appreciate your perspective on it because it's coming from a lot of wisdom. I can feel that. So
Many
um
years of taking care of people.
mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious if there is some like patterns that you've seen that repeat with your fertility client?
Probably the most common thing that repeats is very interesting. There's two things that I see fairly often. One is that women who have struggled and that they have undiagnosed thyroid imbalance.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you first look at the thyroid, it might just look normal, but if you look at the 10 steps of thyroid hormone production, there might be some imbalance within it. And I have at least 3 or 4 women that I've worked with over the years, or in the last few years, who got pregnant simply because I found that they had a thyroid imbalance.
Mm-hmm.
And the other is progesterone.
Mm-hmm.
That when progesterone doesn't work in conjunction with the other hormones, it can create a problem. And so solving those two issues has made it seem easy once those are solved. I remember this one lady, she actually had Hashimoto's undiagnosed.
Mm-hmm.
And when I figured out she had Hashimoto's and I started working with her thyroid, she was pregnant within a couple months.
Yeah.
And so some things can be simple that have not been found, so like
Right.
I guess doing the right testing.
Yeah. Doing the
Yeah.
right testing and having the right interpretation of those tests,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
you can go to a different type of doctor and they'll be like, "Oh, everything's fine. You're perfect." And then they might come to one of us and we're like, yeah, nope. Here's what's
Yeah.
happening. Here's what's really happening.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
and it's unfortunate because I feel like it creates so much misunderstanding for people
Mm.
because like we as providers there isn't coherence, right? Like everyone has a different perspective.
Mm.
But I'm uh, at least my thought in all of this is like if you can find a provider that is able to help you better understand what you already feel in your gut, in your body. Like most people know, right? Like
Mm.
something is out of whack. And if you're telling me that this is what is out of balance,
Mm.
then that helps. It kind of helps me to relax so that I can like let the provider do the job. And I'm curious if that's how you go about it as well or what you've seen because it is so confusing. I can only imagine what this is like in going through this any kind of health healing journey and talking to people and being like, I just need someone who gets it, you know?
That's
Yeah.
why I always give my patients a 15-minute free consultation because it's so important. Like my business is Heart to Heart Medical Center
Yeah.
because it's about that connection and you find somebody who gets it when you have that connection with someone. And that's almost like dating, right? It's like
Yeah.
finding somebody who gets it, right? And sometimes, that may feel difficult, but again, that's one of those divine timing things. When the right person is ready, they'll come along and they'll help you on your journey. And when you find the right connection, the right everything, it falls into place. And for some people, that's so important. And for other people, again, it seems like they don't have to do anything and it's just there. Like, why is it so easy? But
Yeah.
even them, when you look at why is it so easy, there's probably other things that aren't,
Yeah. Yeah.
so that's
Absolutely. Like,
the yeah,
yeah, we're all gonna have lessons to learn, and that lesson might be losing a parent. It might be, a partner. It's like so many things that life
Mhm.
is going to throw at us, and we
Yeah.
will. uh, And I think it's just opportunities in each of those moments to say,
Mhm.
is this where I want to go deeper? And explore what's underneath. And the answer might be no sometimes, but it will
Mhm.
keep showing up in different ways till it's a yes. Right? Like,
Exactly.
I mean, that's why we're here as spiritual
Exactly.
beings.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, I'm curious if, from the MD perspective, and
Mm,
I get that you're not like necessarily a reproductive endocrinologist, but from the MD perspective, where Western medicine is saying we can control your hormones, we can like tell your hormones what they need to do at what time,
mm,
and that's going to get you pregnant. And how you hold that in the context of this like deeper spiritual perspective, which is like this is surfacing at the moment because there's something that you can dive deeper into and have not just healing but transformation. And when you
mm.
don't do that, what happens in the context of like, well, I just chose to move on with my life. I don't want to have to think about it. I want to move on. So curious.
What a great question. That is such a great question. Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, think about what we've done on our earth, how we practice farming, massive farms where we spray all kinds of chemicals on the farm, on the earth, and it's damaging the earth. But we didn't care because we just had to produce a certain amount of food, and we did and our Western approach is often that way, where it's all about achieving the goal. And I have that myself. I've been a surgeon. I was an ER doc for 10 years. So I get it. And I even have that, in my own personal life, where I just want something and I'm just going to go and try to get it. Right. But there's a cost. And then you have to make the decision whether that cost is worth it. So it's not like it's bad necessarily, because, okay, if you want to decide to take a bunch of hormones, to set your clock in a certain way and to do all these things, that's one way to achieve your goal. There will be a cost at some point. We don't know what
And
that cost is.
I just wanted to clarify. So the cost, you're not talking about monetary cost, but
No,
something else.
no.
Yeah, so
Emotional, spiritual, physical cost.
cost.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's really interesting to consider that we are we're making decisions based on what information we have available. So our job as providers is just to make that information available. You said something a little while ago about progesterone. That's very interesting, and I forgot to loop back around to that. Um, so with progesterone, a lot of the fertility world is, oh, progesterone deficiency. We're going to give you some progesterone. See you later. Um,
Mm.
is is that the kind of imbalance that you're seeing, or what are you seeing from the progesterone side that you think is
Well, I
contributing to
think,
this?
I see this also in perimenopausal women, or even women in their like mid to mid 30s, who start to have hormone imbalances and they start to have symptoms of hormone imbalance. And so, yeah, I think progesterone can help recreate that. Again, any tool that you need, that, or any tool that feels like it's going to get you where you want to go, to some degree, that's, yes. But what I've seen, and again, might be because of how our environment is, we have exposure to a lot of synthetic estrogen. And so in Chinese medicine, we say that hormones start declining at around 35. And if you really listen to people talking about their hormones or what's happening in their life, then you can start to see the symptoms of hormones shifting pretty early. And because of, again, I think because we have a lot of synthetic estrogen, progesterone and estrogen don't decline at the same time. And so sometimes you'll have symptoms of too much estrogen, or what we call estrogen dominance, right? And then the progesterone will be much lower. And again, that may not be something that is seen in normal testing, because you can do cycle mapping and actually see what the progesterone patterns are and see where they are. So a little bit of progesterone might just help, but that just might be all that you need to solve the problem. And then working with, reducing the estrogen dominance so that there's a better balance. So it's again about balance.
Yeah.
And it's to some degree related to our environment and the toxicity of of our environment and the chemicals we get exposed to that could be causing it. And I've seen it, in the last few years, I've seen it a little bit more.
Interesting. Cool. Thank you so much for sharing. I know that you have a really cool gift for our listeners, which is the 5 secrets to deal with emotional stress. Do you want to say anything about that?
Sure. So for me, when we get our emotions are sort of the sub language in our bodies. And so if we can deal with emotions when they come up, if we can do something about an emotion when it comes up, if we're experiencing it, and then we have tools that will keep it from being stored in our bodies. It's kind of like that story of, when a lion attacks a zebra, if by any chance the zebra survives, it shakes for a little while. So it releases that energy from its body, right? And it doesn't go around thinking about those traumas for the rest of its life, even though it nearly died. But we have emotions and we have experiences with people and things that happen to us, and then we hold on to them. And if you can find a way to release that. So that's what that is. It's just a little audio that gives you some clues of things to do when you're feeling emotionally out of balance.
Yeah. Love it. This is so useful because so many fertility people are dealing with this every single day. It's like the emotional roller coaster is real.
Yeah.
So absolutely. Y'all can go get that in the link. It will be in the show notes. And make sure to tune in for the rest of the week for Dr. Shiroko's amazing tips.
Thank you for having me. It's been really fun talking to you.
Here.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here. Was that an amazing episode or what? Make sure to check our show notes so that you can link up with our guests. And if you're not a part of our secret Fertile AF community, you can join for free via the link in our show notes. Last but not least, have you showed us some love lately? It would mean the world to us if you could share and review our podcast. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time on Egg Meets Sperm. Peace.